management tools and what we have for the future with regards to lifecycle management of grid software. And for that we have Prasad Pai to speak about the XVM Op Center.
Thanks. Good evening, folks. You are 3 speakers and 1 hour away before the beer and wine starts flowing again, so hang in there. I'll try to make this short and sweet. I'm with the XVM engineering team in the software business unit at Sun. I'd also like to take this opportunity to introduce Jürgen Fleischer, who is a colleague of mine on the team. And so what I'll try to do is give you a flavor for this extremely comprehensive product, but honestly I won't be able to do a justice in the next 20 minutes to even scrape the surface of what we have here. So as an alternative, I'll also offer that both Jürgen and I will be at the Sun booth demoing this product. So if you have some time, stop by and take a look at the product in its full glory. So what I'm going to do is, I'm sure you've seen the Sun cluster portfolio in other talks, so I'll briefly introduce the portfolio, but really provide the context for where Sun XVM portfolio fits in there, and then really dive into the meat of my talk, which is how does Op Center allow you to manage the life cycle of HPC clusters, from its basic capabilities of managing that life cycle to its value proposition, and then really giving you a glimpse into some of the future activities which are looking at providing the integration framework for building out the ecosystem, as well as some exciting future coming attractions. So as you've seen before, the Sun cluster portfolio provides a comprehensive approach to HPC for Sun, starting from all the way to the left there, which is remotely accessible thin clients and developers, to some of the wonderful hardware that Andy talked about this morning. And embedded in that portfolio is our management solution, which is available both on Solaris and Linux. Interestingly, we made the announcement of Sun XVM Op Center 1.1, which is now supported on Linux. So we have Solaris and Linux covered for the entire portfolio. Op Center is really a massively scalable management solution that is very agile in terms of taking new requirements, as well as out of the box, there is a tremendous amount of automation built into the product. Sun XVM as a solution is our solution for both virtualization and management of both the physical as well as the virtualized environments of modern data centers. And so what we're really looking at is being able to do both management of physical and virtualization or virtualized environments in the most efficient way. So it's Sun's approach, an end-to-end approach to manage modern systems so that you can dynamically get resources deployed effectively. And the management extends from both the physical and the virtual aspects, and it goes from servers to network to storage and the entire range. So where do the requirements come from? As you heard Carl speak about, on the left-hand side, we have large academic high-performance grids that are really pushing the envelope, both with respect to scale as well as performance throughput. And so these are the ones that are top 500 supercomputers in the world. On the right-hand side, you have businesses that are trying to solve problems with HPC clusters, right? Again, using large amount of computational resources, using the technologies that are used by people on the left side, but trying to solve business problems such as maybe hunting for oil, as in the case of ExxonMobil, or finding the most optimal routes through city streets that delivery trucks can pass through, as in the case of FedEx. So you're trying to solve similar problems, different management requirements, but a management solution that can encompass both the left and the right-hand sides here. So a little bit talking about the portfolio itself. We have 4 software products in the XVM portfolio. It starts off with, on the left-hand side at the top, which is XVM VirtualBox. That's really our gateway into the portfolio itself. It is a developer-oriented virtualization solution that can allow you to fully virtualize your laptop. And it's supported on every operating system available on the planet. And then coming down here on the bottom side on the right is your XVM VDI, which is the virtual desktop infrastructure. Now, if you take the virtual box, which is a single laptop, and scale that up to multiple desktops, that's where the VDI covers. Now, moving from that to an enterprise scale, which is our XVM server on the top right-hand side, that is our type 1 hypervisor appliance, which allows you to take a server and virtualize that. And then moving on to the right-hand side, or the left-hand side bottom is XVM Ops Center, which allows you to manage at scale multiple XVM servers. So what we really have here is a situation that covers all the way from the left, which is a developer wanting to virtualize their environment on a laptop, to an enterprise production environment where you can not only manage your virtualized environments, but also the physical assets that you have in your cluster environment. And interestingly, this can also be viewed as a game-changing way to actually deploy software in the future. So if those who are familiar with how software is actually developed and deployed, you have a developer that prepares an application, but also captures all the dependencies, both in hardware, software, and network, in some form of a script. And then the developer actually passes that application and the recipe over to the test environment, where they recreate the entire thing again. And then moving on, the test team then passes that on to the deployment environment. So here, we have a situation where the developer can actually give an entirely configured virtual machine, where he has developed the application and has unit tested his software, and that can pretty much be taken completely and dropped into a staging or a test environment, and you don't have to change anything at all. And then moving from there, you can drop that same configured virtual machine from a test environment to a production environment, and nothing has to change. And you have not only the capability of virtualizing it, but also the capability to manage at that scale. The picture on the left here is familiar. Carl showed it this morning, and I honestly didn't know he was going to show it. But essentially, if you look at the life cycle, and you can slice and dice this problem in different ways, but if you look at the life cycle from the time when hardware gets dropped at your shipping dock to the time when you actually want a fully functioning cluster, right? There are various stages in this life cycle. So you start off by preparing a simple inventory of your assets, so discovering them. And it seems like a very simple task to do, but we have found that having an inventory of your assets, especially if you have, if you're in an enterprise where they have multiple HPC clusters by departments, it is an important thing to be able to assess what your inventory is, right? And in terms of HPC specific things, this product actually allows you to do aggregation by groups, and allows you to do role-based, both access and role-based operations based on the subgroups of aggregation that you've done. So from there, from the discovery, you move to provisioning. Again, it seems like a very mundane task, but firmware provisioning is one of these very tricky things where if you don't do it right, you could pretty much make the system completely useless, right? So we have in Ops Center a very hands-off way of not only provisioning the firmware, but provisioning bare metal operating systems, as well as provisioning the applications on top of it. And then moving on from there to keeping your software stack updated with the latest patches and deltas. Also, Ops Center allows you to do completely lights out management, remote management, so things like powering on, powering off. You don't have to be near the server in order to do any of the management operations. And then finally, it has probably one of the most comprehensive reporting capabilities, and this we found it to be extremely important, not only from a compliance point of view, but just being able to report different aspects of your cluster. A lot of our customers found this to be a very big bonus in the product. All right, so the value proposition really is things that seem mundane and that you do day in and day out, and probably sometimes many, many times, you really can achieve getting all those things done in a shorter amount of time. So for example, things like the discovery and the provisioning of firmware and bare metal operating systems that I talked about, you could pretty much achieve an order of magnitude reduction in the time it takes by having a tool such as Sun XVM Ops Center. Similarly, another big aspect here is when we look at things like patching software, you never really go out and just do patching. You have steps such as assessment, validation, which is you do a simulation of it before you actually patch it, and then you patch it. And so those things can, without a good management tool, can be extremely complex, error-prone, and just take a lot of time. So by having Ops Center, these are actually real numbers that we have gotten from customers where they have seen reduction in time and therefore increasing productivity. So we're really fortunate to have TAC as one of our early access customers. Interestingly, we had quite a few HPC customers that allowed us to get a beta version of this product way back in October of last year. And it really helped us design this product with the HPC bent of mind. So in TAC, what we did really was way back in October, we started testing basically the remote management, the power on, power off capability, and started off at really, really small scale, right? like at a shelf 12 blades level. From there, we then looked at how we could provision the software and get both the storage nodes to be provisioned as well as the blades to be provisioned. And then finally, in May of this year, we did a full rollout of Ops Center at TAC. And as Carl mentioned today, they're using it for a lot of the remote monitoring, and it's scaled out for all the entire 4,000 blades at TAC here. So the way this works is we have essentially a tiered architecture with the satellite tier as being the brain of the Ops Center, where most of the content that needs to be provisioned out resides at the satellite. It also provides an entire aggregated view of the cluster. The proxies is in the next tier, and what proxy does is allows you to navigate the network. So if you have different networks, and you want to manage only the service processors in one network and the operating systems in one network, you can actually provision the proxies to manage it at that network configuration. Also, the proxy is the key aspect of scale. So by having many proxies that all feed into one satellite, you can actually scale the system out considerably. On the top there, we have a UI. So the presentation tier is entirely built into the browser. So it's available anywhere, anytime, and on any platform. So as long as you're a browser, you have access to the system. This is where there's a considerable amount of IP built in, a lot of patents filed, because this data model is based on Java management extensions. And the way it works is, if you see the proxy to the left there, that's a proxy that just manages all the service processors in the system. The proxy in the middle manages only the operating system. So if you have a network configuration where you need to have all your service processors being managed, you can place a proxy there. You don't have to punch holes into your firewall. And on the right-hand side here is more of a simple configuration where you don't have all these different networks, and you can have just one proxy that manages both the service processor and the operating system. Now, what happens is, the beauty here is that at the proxy level, you just have the view of what is being managed, but that rolls up at the satellite and you get an entire view of the cluster. Not only that, but also that in addition to having a view of the managed entities, you also have view of the associations. For example, if you have a chassis and a blade, you can actually look at both the chassis and the blade as individual entities as well as associations between them. So a fairly complex piece of data model, which actually is going to be used extensively as we move into the virtualization space. So what we have done is, over the last year, we've built out an infrastructure core, which really is going to enable a lot of the modules that represent functionalities of the Ops Center. Today we have many of these modules available, and I'll talk in a minute about which ones are available today and which ones are going to be available in the future. But really, that is how the entire product is laid out. Another thing that we're spending a lot of time on is making sure that the barrier to adoption and the barrier to building out the ecosystem is very low. And therefore, the integration point is really a web services management API that we're developing, which will allow products to be integrated in a similar way where we have the UI talking to the services within the product, right? In addition to that, we also have an integration point at the bottom here where we have software drivers for the ISV products. Based on this, actually, we have several efforts going on in our community, which is openxvm.org, where we're looking at, we've actually completed the ROCs and XVM Ops Center interoperability. So we're able to take the same distribution and provision it through ROCs and Ops Center. Similarly, the SunGrid engine provisioning, that activity is also completed to a large extent, but there's a lot of things more we can do there. There are lots of other integration projects that are proposed. We have team leads that have been identified for these, and I'll probably have updates for you next time we meet, but I'm expecting at least half a dozen or so ISV integrations to happen through this. So, two really interesting coming attractions in the future releases of the product. One is, today we can actually, the monitoring, the way it works is you can actually look at a point in time of any of the system's resources, so CPU, memory, bandwidth, all that. In the future, we're going to be actually able to plot time series, right, which can go from days to weeks to months, depending on a configurable parameter. So you can actually look at historical monitoring, as well as we'll start seeing power monitoring showing up in the 2.0 release, as well as managing power, which I think is becoming a huge requirement from a lot of our customers. So just to end it here, what we have today is in the 1.x product, so 1.0 and 1.1, which was released recently, we have completed all the green boxes there. The 2.0 product is going to be out later this summer, where we'll have a lot of the virtualization and storage and network management. And then the 2.1 product, which will be out later at the end of this year, we'll have a lot of the policy and power management and fault management. So that will really cover out the entire portfolio. In addition to that, the integration thing I talked about will allow us to build this ecosystem that is needed. So one final thought here is really the goal is to provide a holistic management of HPC clusters that not only looks at the compute nodes and workload, but also storage and network. And do that in a fairly automated way with a lot of rich analysis built into it, like historical monitoring and fault management and things like that. Finally, there are some additional resources. We have the community. Tony Warner has been producing some fantastic podcasts. There's one on Ops Center. We have very good wiki with a lot of information on the product, releases, features, as well as we have an active blogging and the standard Sun website. Thank you.
Kind of feels like ridiculous to ask me any questions because there haven't been anything for the last 5 speakers, but anybody?
Hope everyone can hear me.